Hey everybody, how you doing out there? Mr. Bookman here, and today I'm going to be reading Halloween Sleepwalker by Thomas Freese, illustrated by Fran Riddell. Please enjoy. And I want to welcome a new subscriber to this channel. Welcome aboard. Feel free to check out my other book readings. And I hope you will enjoy my channel. Who knows what strange things roam around on Halloween night? This is a story about a normal boy who lived in a normal family with a normal home. His name was Shelby Sherman Sanford, but he did not have a normal night one Halloween. On Sunday, he went with his parents and older sister to their church fall festival. Shelby's sister's name was Penelope Sanford, but they all called her Penny. They had a fun time and returned home for dinner. Since it was Halloween night, they fixed popcorn and sat around their fireplace telling stories about bedtime. I was always afraid of jack-o'-lanterns, and said their father. I didn't mind our own because it faced away from our house. But late at night, as I walked past the grinning carved pumpkins of our neighbors, I felt they were alive and could get me. Shelby's mom added, "I'm afraid of ghosts. In fact, sometimes," and she turned to address her husband, "I wake up at night and I see your mother standing over our bed." The boy's sister, Penny, was a brave soul, being the oldest child, but even she had a Halloween fear. "I don't want to meet a witch. If I'm out at night on Halloween, I don't mind the silly costumes and fake witches, but I don't want to ever get cornered by a real witch." Shelby, who was 8 years old, was old enough to get into trouble and barely did enough to know better. She couldn't think of anything that would scare him on Halloween night. In fact, Shelby said, "I want to go outside tonight. I'm not afraid of ghosts or witches or a pumpkin with a candle in it. I wish you all would let me go out walking tonight." But Shelby's parents would not allow the boy to walk outside that night. There was a chilly wind and whistling sounds came from trees. A full moon shone brightly on their countryside, and even the owls were quiet, sometimes talking about scary and weird things can give you strange dreams. Shelby went to his bedroom, his parents and his sister to their own rooms. Instead of crawling in bed, he walked over to the window and pulled aside the drapes. He could see their church steeple about 2 miles away, with the old pine tree and graveyard on the hill not far away. Their neighbor's cornfield seemed to glow yellow in the rising moonlight. He thought he saw some dark shadows flying around, dipping in and out of the clouds. They were too big to be bats. Wonder what it could have been. But sleepily he was, and he put on his funnel lawn shirt and pants. He snuggled under the covers and drifted into another world, the realm of dreams. Shelby dreamt that he got out of bed, put on his slippers. He dreamt that he walked down the hallway. Everyone was asleep. The old wooden grandfather clock ticked very slowly, loudly each tick, marching his steps until he reached the front door and went outside. There was no crickets chirping. It was nearly midnight, and the souls were restless, hid in dark places. Shelby walked down their driveway, his slippers' bottoms scraping over the gravel. It did not feel at all strange, but to be out alone. He was not afraid of the night, so he walked into the country road and across to the cornfield. The corn was down the shovel, except for a small circle left up for a maze for the children. Shelby noticed a yellow flickering light coming from the tall circle of the corn. The moon moved behind a cloud, turning it yellow-orange. He heard a voice. It was a voice of women laughing and high-pitched. He turned around a corner in the crackling, dry corn maze and came upon a scene of 5 women dressed in black. They slowly turned to look at him, firelight reflecting on his wide-eyed face. "We've been expecting you," said the tallest witch. She had a long, black, pointy hat. To her right, 5 brooms leaned against the upright corn. The other witches smiled and nodded. One tended the fire, putting in long sticks to make it suddenly flare up. Another witch put something dark and wiggly in a large black pot of water. The 4th witch, dressed in a tattered gray and black cloak, whirled her hands around in the cold air, making strange signs and saying words which he did not understand. The 5th witch was a girl, perhaps just few years older than Shelby. She walked up, smiling, holding a small basket of red apples. She had long red hair and dark eyes, conjuring a host of pictures in his imagination. She said, "Here, take one of the apples." She smiled at him and came closer to say, "I dare you to eat the food of witches." Now, now Shelby was at the stage of life where he needed to prove his bravery. Sometimes, unlike his father, without thinking first and take any challenge immediately to task, he chose the biggest apple and took a bite. It was sweet, and he took a few more bites. As the witches watched, sitting on their bales, he took a giant gulp of air. Then he noticed something odd. He had a new sign of eating some of the apple. The invisible world was not longer hidden. Behind each of the witches was he saw tall, dark shapes above the cornfield. He saw many ghost spirits floating, going from their dark earthly homes to fly about over the night. He glanced down at the cauldron and saw the spirits of the potion reaching potion reaching out with ghostly green hands, wanting to escape from the bubbling brew. Shelby did not know how long his second sight would last. The tall witch picked up a broom and walked slowly over to him. She studied his face, looked at his eyes, and smiled, a dry, small smile. "Well, boy, things look different to you now, don't they?" He shadowed and nodded his head, and then saw two very strange things rise from the far corner of the cornfield. Both were taller than his house, and neither one had a head. He was not sure if he preferred to see their hands. The senior witch placed the broom between his legs and took his hands to set them in the wooden broom handle. Then she clapped her hands, and the other witches shivered aloud in delight, and he swooshed up into the dark night, the wind pulling at his hair and eyelashes. Shelby was flying, riding a witch's broom. Oh, wow. Wouldn't you like to ride a broom? He left the cornfield as the broom seemed to wander about with his own plan. Twice it took him down to skim the cornfield. Then it jerked for a moment and turned toward the graveyard next to the church. He came in from the east over the ridge and headed straight to the old gravestones between the church and the pines. But as the broom took him lower, 40 feet above the cemetery, Shelby noticed with horror that the spectators were rising up from their graves with bony hands to grab at him. With a dozen ghosts wearing a tattered clothes of a dead nearly touching his feet, the boy swung the broom away from the graveyard and barely skimmed the church roof. That's when he felt all power leave the broom. Perhaps witches could not fly over scared grounds. He barely had enough glide in the broom's flight to steer it around the front of the church and collided with an upper branch of an old maple tree. The crash left him tangled up in a small branches, and as they broke, he dropped in stages. Shelby fell into a pile of autumn leaves, raked together, and fortunately in the very spot that would have saved his bones. He knew his sight of the spirits world was nearly gone. He had only eaten part of the apple, and crashed must have dashed most of the magic from his body. But with just enough of the second sight, he saw a very large spider dropping from the tree. His eyes were huge, nearly 6 inches across, and his jaws clicked in appreciation of a small meal. Shelby picked himself up and ran with adrenaline pumping his legs down the road back home. He arrived at the doorstep, tired and drained, dragging his now dirty slippers down the hallway. He fell into bed. Straw and twigs stuck to his pajamas. He fell asleep and had no other dreams. In the morning, he heard his mother's voice gently waking him. "Aren't you ready for breakfast?" she asked, sitting on the edge of his bed. His sister Penny peered around the door, opening instant. "We are so ready to eat. You really slept in." She walked over to join their mother as their father came down the hallway carrying the morning paper. He walked into the room and asked them, "Did anyone else have strange dreams last night? I dreamt I was inside a giant pumpkin trying to climb my way out." He put his arms around his wife and smiled, and she looked up at him saying, "I dreamt that there were all kinds of ghosts flying around the sky." Shelby sat up, still sleepy-eyed, as his sister grabbed Mom's bathrobe to get their attention, adding, "I dreamt that there were witches down in the cornfield." They all laughed, then Shelby told them about his dream. He talked about the witches, the broom ride, seeing all the ghosts, the graveyard, the giant spider, and running back home from church. They laughed again, saying, "Weird." In unison, his mother and father got up and walked into the kitchen. "Wait a minute," shouted his sister. Penny looked back at her brother from the doorway. "Look at the straw and twigs on his pajamas." His mother came back in the room, her eyes open in disbelief. "Honey, what did you do to your slippers? It looks like you went for a hike in them." His father also came back, saying, "You know, when I got up this morning, I found the front door open." Uh-oh, weird. Now, you may never see the world of spirits and strange creatures. You may never take a bite of an enchanted apple. You may never fly on a broom or run away from ghosts, jack-o'-lanterns, and giant spiders. You may never stumble upon a secret meeting of witches, but you'll have dreams. Good night. Wow, I guess he had a dream. Do you ever have dreams like that? Let me know in the comment box with a thumbs up if you had a dream something like Shelby did. Well, everybody, if you enjoyed this story time, give it a thumbs up. And I want to say thank you very much for watching and enjoying. And if you're new and came along this story time, hit that red subscribe button down below and subscribe to my channel. But again, everyone, you all take it easy out there and have a good one. Until next time, I am Mr. Bookman. This story time is over. Y'all take it easy and be safe.